Good afternoon, learners from the Northern Cape. What an absolute pleasure to have you this afternoon here at this Business Studies revision session. My name is Lester Momberg and I'm a curriculum advisor at the Western Cape Education Department. I want you to sit back and to relax and enjoy this session with us, and what we intend doing is to unpack the learning outcome business environments, and then we want to unravel and see what is the content that you are required to know. And hopefully it will be an interactive session. I want to encourage you to write down any questions and forward any questions or concerns you might have regarding the topic. So let's look at the first slide. Important, when you tackle any topic in business studies, it's important to know where does it come from, because these are the things that they are going to assess you on the end of the year. So learning outcome 1 says that learners are required to devise strategies in response to the challenges in the macro business environment. Given that as our learning outcome, let's see what are outcomes for this session. Firstly, we are going to look at some concepts and attach meaning to concepts. I believe it's extremely important that if you want to understand the language, you need the subject, you need to understand the language, and you need to know what the meaning of the concepts are. So we're going to look at some of these concepts. We're also going to look at the business environment. Remember, the business environment was dealt extensively in grade 10 and also grade 11, and so we're going to look at those environments also. Then we are going to identify the challenges in the macro environment, and then we're going to have a short revision session. I call it 60 seconds, in which I'm going to require you to answer some questions relating to the work we've covered previously. Then the learning outcome requires us to devise strategies, so we're going to look at how do we devise strategies, how do we develop strategies. And then I believe an important part is how do we write an essay. Essays count 80 marks at the end of the year, and we're going to see how you can benefit from knowing the techniques you can use in order to benefit from the marks that are allocated for essays. And then we're going to end off with a summary of what we did today. Right, so let's see. The learning outcome says that we must devise strategies, and I think that's the first concept that you need to become familiar with. And then develop strategies in response to challenges in the macro business environment. So we're going to look at what does the word strategy means. We're going to look at what does the word challenge means, or the concept. And then we're going to recap your macro business environment. Now, a strategy is simply a plan of action, something you're going to do to achieve a goal. And in life, we deal with strategies all the time. It's just we don't call it by that name. But it's a plan of action. We're going to do something to achieve our objectives. So that's a strategy. And business have got to develop strategies because they deal with what we call many challenges. So what is a challenge now? A challenge is simply a task or a situation that tests the organization's abilities. The organization is given a problem or encounters a problem. What is it going to do about that problem? And so that is a challenge. And we know if the business doesn't address these challenges, the possibility exists that the business could perhaps go bankrupt. And so it's important that the business tackle the challenges that it deals with. Your business environments, I alluded to it earlier, we dealt with it extensively in grade 10 and 11, but just to recap, remember we've got 3 business environments. The first one is the micro environment. The second one is the market environment, and the third one is the macro environment. And we know that business got different levels of control over each of these environments. And let's look at the first one, the micro environment. What control does the business have over the microenvironment. I wonder if there are any learners sitting there in the Northern Cape that could perhaps give me that answer. What control does the business have over the microenvironment? Any answers coming through? Right, while you're thinking about that, let's look at the second one. What control has the business got over the market environment? And so maybe you can think of the two. Firstly, the control over the microenvironment, and secondly, what control does the business have over the market environment? And the third one, what control does the business have over the macro environment? Now remember, these are all work that was done in grade 10 and 11 already. So let's see, did we get any answers? There's no answers came through yet. So let's look at the answers. Firstly, the microenvironment. Business has got complete control over the microenvironment. And later on, we're going to look at the components of the microenvironment so they can see exactly why the business has got complete control over the microenvironment. The market environment. Business has got no control over the market environment, but very important, the business can influence the market environment. And when we look at the components of the market environment, we can then see why the business has no control but influence. The macro environment, the business has got absolutely no control over the macro environment. Here I've got an answer from, I see we've got Homevale High School, learners from Homevale High School watching this session. Welcome. It's good to see that you're here this afternoon. This learner indicated, yes, the business has got full control over the microenvironment. Thank you very much for that correct answer. And I believe as we share answers with one another, we will indeed learn from this session. Thank you for your participation. Right, so let's recap quickly. What are the microenvironments, the components? Business needs to develop its own mission, vision, goals and objectives. The business microenvironment has got business, it must have its own organizational culture, organizational resources. Business must provide management and leadership. We've got the 10 business functions and the organizational structures. And you can see all these things. Management, business has got full control over these environments or these components. So that's an important part of the microenvironment. If you look at the market environment, remember we said no control, but the business can influence. And let's see, the business can influence the consumers. Business can influence the competitors, civil society, regulators, intermediaries, suppliers, and also their strategic allies. And then the key component that we need to look at are the components of the macro environments. What are their components? And I would like you to take note of this, that the components of the macro environment is the economic environment, the global environment. The economic environment will deal with things like interest rate, price hikes, price increases, what happens when there's goods being imported and exported, what happens to the value of the rand. All those things has got the influence on the business, but the business has got no control over that. The global environment, we all know what's happening in the world today. The world is a global village, and countries can trade freely with one another, and this is a challenge to the business. And the business needs to find out what can it do in order to survive the global environment competitors that's coming through. The political environment, the legal environment, the social environment, technological environment, we've got the institutional environment, the cultural environment, and also the demographics. From those environments, here's one word that we can derive as a mnemonic, and that is pestle. So if you remember pestle, maybe I must write it down for you. Your macro environment, the components, if you remember pestle, P-E-S-T-L-E, It's a nice way of remembering the components of the macro environment. P would be for political. E would be for economic. S would be for social. T would be for technological. L would be for legal. And then another E could be for the environment. So it's a nice way of remembering your components of the macro environment. So briefly, learners, that is just a recap of what was taught in grade 10 and grade 11. Let's look at what we must do during this learning outcome. We must identify challenges in the macro environment. So let's do that first. Let's identify the challenges in the macro environment. Let's look at a few examples of the challenges. There could be a change in the income of the consumers. Now, when there's a change in the income of the consumers, I wonder if you could tell me which component of the macro environment is that an example of? Any learner can tell me that. When there's a change in the income. Let's see quickly if we've got an answer. A change in income. Which component? Remember the 6 components plus another 4. The 6, we break it down into pestle. Changes in income. Which of those 6 will it be? Any learner can give me an answer? None coming through? Changes in income would be your economic environment. It deals with the economy. Okay, let's look at the next one. Globalization. Globalization. What is an example of globalization? We know that countries like China are producing on a large scale at low unit prices. And they can sell all over the world. And so we've got free movement of goods and services, free movement of capital. And so the whole global world village has opened up for trade between different countries. And that is a challenge for the business. And we need to deal with it, even though we cannot influence it or we've got no control over that. Political changes, okay, that's quite easy. That would be a political environment. And then current legislation could be another challenge. We know that the government is responsible for policy and for laws and regulations. And sometimes these laws and regulations doesn't fit in with what our business would like to achieve. And so we need to keep that in mind. And then the big issue currently are the labor restrictions. Businesses are complaining and saying, but we cannot fire and hire left, right and center. They cannot do that because they're governed by the Labor Relations Act. We've got the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. We've got the Employment Equity Act, the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, and all these impact on the business are identified as challenges for the business. I see we've got Homewell still with us, and they are also enjoying the session. Welcome, learners. Right, other challenges that can be identified are the following. Unemployment. We know that that is a challenge because if a large part of the population is unemployed, then we've got no customers. People don't have money, so they can't buy from us. So that is a challenge. Then obviously poverty is another challenge. We know that the poverty levels in this country is quite high. We've got the unequal distribution of income, large number of people earning millions of rands, large number of people earning small amount of money, and then a small number of people earning millions of rands. Then we've got crime that we've got to deal with, and then we've got HIV/AIDS that affects the workforce. And so we've got to deal with this, and the business got to deal with that. And all these challenges that I've identified resort under what we call the socio-economic issues. And so we've identified now the challenges that the business encounters or must deal with. Now that we know these challenges, we've got to develop strategies. But before we do that, let's take a 60 seconds break and let's just consolidate what we did. We spoke about the components of the macro environment. I wonder if you could just kindly make a note of it. Just write it down quickly. Write down the first one, political. The second one, economic. The third one, social. The fourth one, technological. The fifth one, legal. And then the sixth one, the environment. These are possible answers. And those learners at Homevale High, I want to see if you can respond. I'm going to give you exactly 60 seconds. You're going to get 6 possible scenarios. And I want to see whether you can match the components of the macro environment, the 6 we've identified, with the 6 scenarios that's going to be displayed now. You've got exactly 60 seconds to do that. Right, first one, dumping of poisonous chemicals in a river. And maybe you can SMS the answers through to me. Which of the environments does that one, is that an example of? Which of the components in the macro environment is that an example of? B, implementation of the National Credit Act. Which of the components is B an example of? C, Reserve Bank increasing the repo rate. What is that an example of? Which component of the macro environment? I see we've got an answer here. Thank you very much. The first one, they say it is the environmental. Well done. Brilliant. Okay, let's see if we can do B, C, and then D. Government's role in dealing with unemployment. Which one is that one? New software used in business. And then finally, the high rate of HIV/AIDS in South Africa. Righto, we've got 60 seconds. Let's see quickly. All you've got to do is just write it down in the order, chronological order, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then your answer. 40 seconds left. I've only got one answer so far, which is A, dumping of poisonous chemicals in the river. C, I've got an answer here that C is economic. Yeah, you are 100% right. Brilliant work, great work. Thank you for that. D, I'm told is political. Absolutely right. You've learned. E, I'm told is technological. Great stuff. And F, I'm told is social. Brilliant. Do we have all the answers? I don't have an answer for B. I wonder why you skipped B. Because through the process of elimination, you should know that there's only one component still left. I wonder if you can give me that so that we can get 100% correct answers. Am I going to get that answer? It's not coming through. Implementation of the National Credit Act in 2007. It is, of course, the legal environment. Thank you. Right, let's continue. There's the answers: environmental, legal, economic, political, technological, and then finally social, as you rightly indicated. Right, so now we've identified the challenges in the macro environment. The next thing we need to do is devise strategies to overcome the challenges. Now what's important is the order. We've got to devise strategies. But you can only devise the strategies once you know what are the challenges, because these strategies must overcome They must reduce, they must eliminate the challenges. So how do we devise strategies? That's a key question that you should ask yourself. How do I devise a strategy? Now there are 4 things that you need to keep in mind when you devise a strategy. What's the first thing? Whenever you devise a strategy, the first thing you need to do, you must conduct a SWOT analysis. Again, it's work that was done in grade 10, was even done in grade 9. So you must conduct a SWOT analysis. That's the first step. The second step is you must formulate a strategy. So we're going to look at these concepts individually, but for now I want you to look at the words that are underlined, because you need to be smarter and not study harder. If you can remember the word SWOT and formulate, you've already got 2 concepts you can work on in determining what are the strategies. The third one, once we've formulated the strategy, we must implement the strategy. So we firstly got to conduct or develop or design a SWOT analysis, we must formulate a strategy, we must then implement the strategy, but more important than anything else, we must evaluate the strategy. And so we're going to unpack each of these steps that we need to incorporate into the development of strategies. Let's look at the first one, the SWOT analysis, and you'll be amazed that when you look at a memorandum of past exam question papers, just by identifying the headings of what the SWOT analysis stands for, the S would be for strengths, you'll get a mark for that. The W would be, you must identify what are the weaknesses within the business, you get a mark for that. The O would be for opportunities, what opportunities exist that the business can expand on. And then the T would be for what are the threats the business are facing. Now learners, you should be able to develop or devise a SWOT analysis for the business environments. Now when I say that, immediately you should know that you should be able to develop 3 distinct SWOT analysis. Why do I say that? I say that because you should know that your business environments, and we said it earlier, consist of 3 things. The micro environment, the micro, the macro, and also the market. So as a grade 12 student, they can ask you to develop a SWOT analysis for any one of these environments. We are interested in the market environment, so that's the one that we are going to look at today. Right, so in devising your strategy, the first step must be you must develop a SWOT analysis. In your SWOT analysis, now we normally do it in a table form. So you're going to have a table in which you've got your strengths on the one side, and the opposite side we're going to have weaknesses. We're going to have our opportunities, and on the opposite side we're going to have our threats. Very important that when you develop your SWOT analysis, your strengths are the factors inside the business. So it's internal. The weaknesses are also the factors inside our business. However, when we look at the opportunities, it's what happens outside of the business. When we look at the threats, it's also what happens outside of the business. So just keep that in mind when you're asked to develop a SWOT analysis. Right, so that was the first step in devising a strategy. We must devise or develop a SWOT analysis. The second step is we must formulate a strategy. Now people, in formulating a strategy simply means where do we want to be? How do we get there? If we formulate a strategy, where do we want to be? And that's a question you must ask yourself. And how do we get there? And so you can see there are different steps. Our strategy here would be, we would like this puzzle to be completed. But how do we get there? And that is the formulation of a strategy. Now, in formulating a strategy, there are a few things that you need to remember. And I want you to keep this in mind, because when we look at our essay later on, that's going to be part of the formulation of the strategy. Firstly, we've got to adapt the mission and the vision of the business if it is necessary. We could be facing these challenges because our vision and our mission is not in line with what we want to achieve. If we've got no vision and a mission, we then need to construct with one, so that we can know where we are going to and know where we want to be. So that's the first thing when you formulate a strategy. Look at the mission and the vision and determine whether it's necessary to make changes to that. Secondly, in formulating a strategy, we need to identify threats and weaknesses. Following that, we also need to look at what are the strengths and opportunities that exist. Strengths within the business and opportunities that exist outside of the business. Thirdly, we need to look at our medium-term goals. What do we want to achieve in the medium term? Now, we know the short term is a very short period. Could be a week, could be a month. The medium term could be anything between 1 and 5 years. Long term, you know, should be anything more than five years. So we need to determine what do we want to achieve within the 1 to 5 year period. Then we need, once we know once we've got this information and we know these facts, then we need to develop different strategies. So we're not just going to say, right, one size fits all. We develop different strategies, and then very importantly, we select the best one. So now we know how we are going to get to where we want to be. We determine whether the mission and the vision is still in line with what we want to achieve. We look at threats and weaknesses. We look at strengths and opportunities. We determine our medium-term goals. We develop different strategies, and out of that, we select the best one. Righto. The third step would be the implementation of the strategy. Now remember, we've developed different ones. We've chosen the best one, and now we can't just leave it there. We need to implement it. We need to put it into action, and that is what implementation means. It involves putting the strategy that you formulated into action, into practical things. And how do we do that? Firstly, we need to compile a budget so we can know exactly how much it's going to cost us. What amount of money do we have to have available in order to ensure that this strategy that we devised can be implemented successfully. So we compile a budget. Keyword is budget. Make sure that we allocate our resources efficiently, that it's at the right place, the right people are doing the right stuff. We need to look at our organizational structure, make sure that everybody knows exactly what is his or her function within the organization. Make sure that the leadership and management is creative, that they support their employees, that they motivate them, and that they give direction so that we can achieve our goals. I alluded to that. Remember, a happy workforce will ensure that the business produces high levels of goods and services, productivity is high, and so it's important that they must be motivated and united. And make sure that the strategy, if it's not working, that you adapt it if adaptation is required. It's not a rigid document. It should be flexible. If it achieves the goals, it's fine. But if it doesn't, then you can adapt it and you can make sure that you achieve what you set out to achieve. Right, so finally, and this is why I believe it's important, you cannot have a strategy and just leave it like that. It's important that management evaluate the strategy. So if we just look at the steps, firstly, we spoke about a SWOT analysis must be developed. We spoke about formulation of the strategy. And then we spoke about the implementation of the strategy. But very important, there must be evaluation of the strategy. Now, what is an evaluation? Is simply looking with a fine comb at what is happening when the strategy was implemented. Looking at different activities. Is it performing the way it should be performing? Are the results that we set out to achieve? So we monitor that, and that is what evaluation is all about. It's about monitoring. Then it's about also comparing the actual results that you've got after you've implemented the strategy with the goals that you've set. And then you need to determine whether the strategy actually solved the challenge. Has the challenge been eliminated? Has it been reduced? Can we go forward knowing that the company is on the path of growth and profitability? And so there are steps when you evaluate strategies. You determine if the desired results are achieved. Did your business achieve the results they set out to achieve? How do you do that? You compare expected results with actual performance. Now, once you do that, it's very seldom that the two will meet. And the difference between the two, actual results and expected performance, is what we call a deviation. So if there is a deviation from what we planned, we need to find out what are the reasons for the deviation. Why didn't we achieve what we planned to achieve? Why didn't we get to where we expected to be? And so we need to find out what are the reasons for the deviations. We determine the reasons and we analyze the reasons. Why did it happen? Why didn't we achieve our objectives? And then we need to take actions to prevent any deviation from happening, and so that we can get our the expected results that we've planned to achieve. And so, learners, those are the steps that we need to take into consideration when we devise a strategy. Final point when we evaluate, if there are deviations, and I alluded to that, we need to take corrective actions so that it doesn't happen again. Righto, so we've identified the strategies, and then we also looked at how do we devise the strategy. Now let's look at a possible exam question. Normally when you get an essay, you'll get your question and they will give you a case study or a scenario. It's normally in a block, in a square. And then you'll get the question. Now I want to encourage you. When you get a question, an essay question, and it's a scenario and a case study, the first thing I want you to do is to read the question. In reading the question, you will know exactly what is required, and then you can go to the case study. Now here they say you must develop a SWOT analysis for good luck glass recycling. They're saying a few things. Then they say you must formulate strategies to overcome their challenges and state how the strategies could be evaluated. And it's for 40 marks. Let's just look at that 40 mark breakdown quickly. How do they get to 40 marks? For facts, you get 32 marks. For the layout, you get 2 marks. Analysis, 2 marks. Synthesis, 2 marks. And originality, 2 marks. Now for layout, you were told by your educators that you need to write introduction, the word introduction, and have 3 sentences under that. You need to write at the end conclusion and have 1 sentence that you haven't mentioned in the original essay. So that's where you get your marks for layout. Analysis, make sure that you've got the correct headings. So if your essay, the body part of your essay is divided into say 5 factors, make sure that those factors are written down so that you can get the 2 marks for analysis. Synthesis, where do you get the 2 marks for? If the body says there should be 5 factors, make sure that the facts under each factor are the correct ones. Then you have synthesized the information. Then you get 2 marks for that. And then you get 2 marks for originality. They normally require you to write down an example, a current example. In every essay, make sure you write down a current example so they can get 2 marks for originality. Don't just write your essay. Look at the structure of the essay. You've read the question now, and so now you look at, right, what is the structure going to be? Firstly, you're going to have your introduction with 3 facts. Then you're also going to have, they ask you to develop a SWOT analysis, so make sure that that is in your answer. They also ask you to formulate strategies, so make sure that that is in your answer. So you can already see this is going to be your headings also. Then they asking you to evaluate the strategies, and then you end off with a conclusion. So I would encourage you, whenever you answer an essay, look at the structure first. What am I going to include? How do I get this? Where do I get this information from? I get it from the question. Where's the question? Always just below the case study, which is in a box or a square. Right, once you've got the structure, then you can read your case study, but very important, read your case study with insight, with understanding. Now, in your notes, you've got an example of a case study relating to this essay question. Now, we don't have the time, but what I would do is, as I read that case study, I will indicate clearly, as I read it, each factor that tells me that that business or that point is either a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. So I would read, they say about Consol glass increasing the recycling volume. I would read that, is it a strength, opportunity, threat, or weakness? No, that's just general information. Right, they talk about 2 friends, Kato and Dominic. They are school friends, they are buddies, they know each other so long. Is that a strength or a weakness? It's certainly a strength because they know one another. The company launched Good Luck Glass Recycling. Is that a strength or a weakness? Ah, that's just general information. However, Kato studied business studies in grade 12. Aha, that's a strength. He can use some of that information. How to devise a strategy. You can certainly do that. Kato did a course in business management. Aha, that would also be a strength. And so you can go along. At the end of the session, once you've read the case study, you would then have a list of general strength. You would also have a list of what are the threats, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities. And once you've got that, you can go and sit down and write your essay. When you write your essay, you've got your introduction. You need to have your 3 facts, 1 mark each. Then we're going to, because developing strategies involves visions and missions, we need to look at what is the vision and the mission of the company that's mentioned, Good Luck Glass Recycling, and you incorporate it in your essay. Remember, we spoke about medium-term goals and objectives. It's in your case study, you incorporate it in your essay. Then you do your SWOT analysis. You've already written in the case study where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, and then you just incorporate it in a SWOT analysis. Look at the format of the SWOT analysis, and that's how you're going to be assessed. In formulating strategies, they ask you to do that. Very important, you must formulate the strategies strategies in response to the challenges. So you've got your SWOT analysis. These are your challenges, and you only formulate your strategies based on the weaknesses and the threats. And there are examples of how you would formulate strategies in response to the challenge based on your case study. Now, learners, you may not have all this information, but I will certainly make sure that your curriculum advisors get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation so that you can work through it in your own time also. Evaluation of the strategies, we dealt with it earlier, exactly the same things you've got to mention as we had it in our notes, taking into consideration the practical example of the case study. And then we ended off our essay with a concluding statement. Righto, so let's just summarize what we did today. We started off by looking at concepts, strategies and challenges. We looked at the business environments, micro, market and macro. We identified the challenges in the macro environment. We devised the strategies. We looked at how do we devise the strategy. And then we looked at how do we write an essay, what should be in the essay, and how do they assess the LASO. Learners, I trust that you have enjoyed the session. I trust that you have got a better understanding of development of strategies. I want to thank you for sharing this moment and spending time with us during this session. I want to wish you well for the rest of the year. And next time when we see each other again, we will look at another topic also relating to the development of strategies. I thank you and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very, very much.